Okay, Mark, we're back, and we're going to talk about the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat did not trade for Damian Lillard, despite the fact that many reporters thought that's where it was going to go, including myself. I'll put my hand up. I assumed this was just going to end with Damian Lillard in Miami. Now, I think I talked more about the Milwaukee possibility than anybody else. I talked extensively about it. I brought up a crazy trade idea with Drew Holiday going to Milwaukee Damian Lillard going to Milwaukee, multiple times on this show. I thought that Milwaukee made a lot of sense as a team that should chase Damian Lillard, but I didn't think it would happen, especially not when it happened, to be honest. So I'm not going to take a victory lap on this. I think I was wrong because I thought he was going to end up in Miami. Miami does not end up with him. They don't end up with Drew Holiday either. And now this team is in an intriguing place, let's go with, because they have their core of last season back. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, and, Eastern Conference Finals MVP Caleb Martin. But they've lost Max Strus. They've lost Gabe Vincent. They haven't, as much as I love Jaime Jaquez, I wouldn't argue that he's an immediate replacement. Same with Josh Richardson and Thomas Bryant, guys that they signed in free agency for minimum deals. I think I like Orlando Robinson probably a little bit more than most as a potential backup center, but that's what we're talking about with Orlando Robinson this year, in my opinion. So this team is a diminished version of itself from last year. Now, itself last year made the NBA Finals and was quite good, but last year they also were the 7 seed in the East and almost lost in the play-in and got eliminated. So where do the Miami Heat sit right now for you?
I think kind of the same place I felt about them last year. I think that they're probably fighting to be the team just above the play-in. Maybe they're working to be a 6 seed. And I think that they need things to really hit for them this year for that to happen. Again, would love to be wrong on that. I just think the top tier of the Eastern Conference has gotten so much stronger. And I don't want to say top heavy, but I feel like last year there were 7 teams from 4 to 11 that all felt relatively ish close to each other once you got past the 50-win teams at the top. But now I think with Miami, I don't know if you saw today, Kyle Lowry said that he expects to be a starting point guard, which was mind-blowing shit to me. All due respect to Kyle. I understand that he expects that, but I think that would be bad.
Well, why wouldn't he start though on this team?
Well, I think that's what it sounds ridiculous,
so,
but it didn't hit me until today that I'm oh, Kyle Lowry's still starting for this team. And
no, he's going to start. It's going to be Kyle, Tyler, Jimmy Butler, Bam, and my guess is that they start Kevin Love, given that that's what they did in the playoffs, and they'll bring Caleb as the 6th man off the bench. But yeah,
yeah, exactly. So I looked at that and I was wow, that was a revelation for me today, or I guess yesterday, I should say. But I think I look at this team and there are some things where you can look at where okay, maybe there's some internal improvement. Like you said, I like Orlando Robinson a lot. I think he showed some solid stuff last year. Looks like he put on some weight, got stronger. That's always big. So I think when you look at what the backup big situation was for them most of last year, okay, there's some improvement there. Potentially, I like Thomas Bryant as a third guy who can give them a different look. I actually am kind of bullish on Caleb Martin maybe taking another step this year. He became a really solid player last year.
I like this take. Explain why you're bullish on Caleb Martin.
I just think he's continuing to get better every year. It's always minor. He went from being a guy who wasn't an awesome defender in Charlotte to I think he improved quite a bit on that end in Miami to becoming pretty serviceable. And then the offense really started to pop last year. He went from being a pretty minimal 3-point shooter to okay, I'm going to start taking them in more volume. The closeout attacking stuff has always been there, but it was always more just slashing and in transition. And now I feel like he's been able to take advantage of that in the half court. And I think to me, obviously he's not the same player that he was in the Eastern Conference Finals and being awesome there, but I think that was the idealized version of him. Okay, maybe you can run a little bit of secondary offense on the wing and, you can trust him to lead the break. And he's going to do some things that are positive defensively. And, he can just stick out there and not be like you can trust him to be solid on both ends. And I think for me, there's room for him to keep improving in that regard. I'm biased because I've always liked the Martin twins. They're just fun basketball players to watch, especially Caleb, underrated, one of the best dunkers in the league in game. But yeah, I think that there's room for that. But even then, again, we're talking, okay, maybe he becomes a really solid fourth or fifth player if things really hit. And I think right now it's probably more of he's going to be a supercharged bench player. So like, exactly. It's like, well, how realistic is that? And then, like you said with Jaime, I think Jaime I'm a little bit lower on Jaime than you are. I think like that there's room for him to become a really interesting rotation player, but not right now on a team that's trying to be a contender again. A lot's going to be on Bam. And I think part of what I'm most interested in, and this is not me trying to be down on Jimmy Butler, but like he's 34 this year. Like he is getting up there. I think that you can still trust him to be an incredible playoff performer, but I think asking him to carry at that level for 82 games in the regular season is a lot. And as somebody just mentioned, I mean, obviously Jovic, I think Jovic is a really big factor this year too. But again, like we're talking about guys on their rookie scales and players who were scrap heap is not the appropriate phrasing, but like guys who were the typical Miami Heat fashion, like a guy who went from being close to out
Guys
of the
who are
league
on the minimum
or not. Yeah, exactly. To becoming like you're a steady rotation player. And like, that's great. But this team needs star talent. It's not about filling out the rest of the rotation. So I think that they can still be a playoff team this year. And like, of course, I'm never going to doubt the Miami Heat in the playoffs ever again because I have learned my lesson. But I just think that it's a really, really hard path to keep dragging yourself down just to fight it out in the playoffs. Like I don't know.
Where I'm at on Miami is I think that their margin for error is basically non-existent this year now.
Mm-hmm.
Losing Max Strus and Gabe Vincent makes things harder for them unless Jovic is like ready to step in from day one. He was really great during the World Cup. International play is just very different from a spacing perspective, from an athleticism perspective. I would really like to see how he defends in space and how he defends within Miami's scheme, which can get varied and which can adjust based on personnel and based on who you're playing against at the time. Eric Spoelstra knows how to really accentuate his guys' skill sets, but he also knows how to take away the opposing team's skill sets. So there is a better opportunity for Jovic here to be able to defend in space than in other situations. And I want to acknowledge that, but I want to see it before I really believe in it in a full way. His offensive skill set looks real. I want to see him shoot consistently over the course of a full season before I really dive in as well. I've always liked him best, like as a transition player and as a ball handler for a big. I think he will shoot at some point. I just don't know that it will be this year necessarily. But if one of Jimmy Butler or Bam, especially Bam, actually, in my opinion, if one of those two go down, this becomes a significant issue for Miami. I actually don't know how they would manage that. And with a team like Milwaukee, for instance, if Giannis goes down, now they have Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez. If Jason Tatum goes down, they have Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, et cetera, Kristaps Porzingis, right? Even if two of those guys go down, they're probably okay. They'll have to figure something out depth-wise, and they'd probably have to make a move to get somebody like a Dean Wade into that Grant Williams trade exception just to have bodies. But again, interesting potential options here.
Yeah. I do think. Oh, sorry.
Even looking across, like I think the Knicks probably couldn't go without Jalen Brunson for a super long time. But if they do, like Emmanuel Quickley is probably the best backup point guard in the NBA, in my opinion. So, yeah, you have a world where you can survive without your best player, I think. And they're so deep that they can just be fucking miserable to play for that time. again, like you just continue to go down the East. And I think that those teams have a margin for error that Miami doesn't.
Yeah.
And if Miami stays fully healthy, I think they're probably the 4 seed, something like that, even in the regular season. Like they're going to be really good. Tyler, I think, is going to get better. I would not want to play against a pissed off Tyler Hero. Like I think that he is going to take everything that happened this offseason personally and come out and be fucking awesome.
Can I
I really believe in him like that.
Yeah, I want to say something on that. First of all, because I agree. I think people are way too down on Tyler Hero. I get it because of the contract, but also look at what contracts are looking like now. Just get over it. But like I know like there's actual stuff with team building, but you get what I'm saying. But I think I saw a lot of like, oh well, Hero's just like talking so much for it. Dude, first of all, it's media day. People are gonna ask him questions about it. That's why he's talking about it. That's why he's answering. Second of all, like, would you not be pissed too? Like, I mean, like on one hand, like you get it, like it's Damian Lillard, but on the other hand too, like, okay, part of the reason why Tyler Hero is an incredibly successful basketball player is that he thinks he's the shit, and that's what he does. That he's confident. It would be hard to not take that to heart after the team drafts you. You've been a part of multiple runs to the finals now, and then it's like, oh well, we're gonna get somebody else. So it is, I get it. So I just think that there's sometimes too much asked with that. But
well, Tyler is a incredibly confident human being, and that's again what, like you said, what makes him so good is that he is that confident and has that kind of shiftiness, has that kind of inherent creativity in his game. And I think we're going to see him improve. He's going to get better as a driver. He's going to get better at drawing fouls. Like to me, that's the next big evolution in his game, given how good he is at attacking closeouts, given how good he is at like being able to run ball screens. At some point, he's going to figure out how to draw contact, and he's a great free throw shooter. We know that. And that's going to be a real evolution for him.
Yep.
So look, Tyler Hero is a really, really good basketball player. He's not as valuable on the trade market as Drew Holiday is. And, Miami fans just need to kind of come to grips with that and understand it. But Tyler Hero is a great basketball player. And at the end of the day, he's worth continuing to invest in. Because Tyler Hero exists, I actually think that like if Jimmy Butler would miss 15 to 20 games, which Jimmy sometimes can do during the course of a season, you look through the number of games Jimmy has played throughout, the last few years, 64, 57, 52, 58, 65, 59, going back to 2017-18, the year in Minnesota. They can, I think, survive without Jimmy for a minute. The guy that can't survive without is Bam. And Bam played 75 games last year and was phenomenal. I would have had him second team all defense, as I talked about in the Kai Duncan, on Twitter yesterday about. Like, I thought he was absolutely tremendous. He had his best offensive season as well last year, averaging 20.4 points per game. He had 3.2 assists per game. He took on more of a scoring load, in addition to still being that versatile chess piece defensively that they use in counters and zones. And they switch him onto great players and they can play him in drop. I think that's something sneakily that Miami played him more in last year, was actually drop coverage. And he was successful, or at least more successful than he'd ever been previously. So I really, really think that Bam is the center. Bam isn't their best player, Jimmy Butler is, but Bam is their most like indispensable, you can't lose him player, because they don't have a replacement for him and what he brings.
Yeah, no, I think it's a totally fair take, and I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah, so it's just a margin for error thing. If one of those guys goes out, if they both were to miss like different 15 to 20 game samples this season, I actually think Miami will be pretty close to a play-in team again. Mm-hmm. But if they stay healthy and if one of them goes through a little stretch like that, I think they're probably fine to make the playoffs. And if they both stay healthy, I think they're probably like the 4 seed, basically, or maybe even the 3 seed, to be honest. Those two are so good that it's really, really hard, I think, to overlook them in any way, shape, or form.